Hello? I don't exactly know how well I'm coming across, so if anybody could let me know. Okay. I think I got it all set up now. Okay. I don't know how well I'm coming through, but I'm just gonna kind of go for it. So, I have a new outfit that I wanted to show. And as you can see, so far it's the same, but I have glasses. What is this? I have some glasses. I don't know if y'all can let me go a little bit higher. A little bit higher. My glasses and the top of the dress. And I have cute little braids, cute little pigtails. I also am trying to play like spooky music in the background, and I don't know if it's working, so just let me know. But yeah, I have that and a little bit more of the dress. This is very cute, no? Little bit more, showing off the hearts. Is very cute. Very cute in my opinion. And the full outfit. This is the full outfit. I've got the little socks, little shoes. I think it's very, very cute. I also have some hand tracking that is not very good. And a candy basket that will not go away. It will not go away. I can't remove it. I tried going back in and I can't remove it. So I'm kind of just stuck with that. But yeah. So for the stream, I thought it would be kind of fun if I read off some spooky stories from my childhood. Possibly from your childhood as well. I actually have hold on, I have to grab it. Hold on. Okay, I actually have, from back in the day, I have the scary stories to read in the dark books. Oh, okay, yay, hello. Hello. And yay, I'm glad the music is working. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. So I have with me. Also, sorry if you hear any background noise. I live in a very noisy house filled with animals, so apologies if any background noise pops up. That's very that is not scheduled. So I actually have with me the scary stories to read in the dark books back from my childhood and perhaps your childhood as well. I don't know, but a little fun fact on how I got these books. I actually had these in my school library, and my mother worked for a little while there. Mama Bun used to work there. She was a teacher. And eventually the school ended up shutting down. But when it did, she was able to grab some books for me from the library before they were able to snatch them all. And some of those were the Scary Story to Read in the Dark books. So I have those here today. And I was going through some of them and I'm like, wow, some of these are actually pretty scary still. So I thought those would be pretty good to read out. I don't know exactly how long this stream will be. It might just be a little bit of me just chatting, a little bit of reading stories. We're just gonna play it by ear, but we're going to flip through the book here. And we're gonna start with the first story. I'm gonna turn down the music just a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't completely make it silent. BA. Okay. And I'm gonna readjust myself here. Hopefully none of this pops up. Okay, cool. No. Give me one moment. There we go. There we go. I'm a little bit closer now. Okay. So this story is called Cold as Clay. A farmer had a daughter for whom he cared more than anything on earth. She fell in love with a farmhand named Jim, but the farmer did not think Jim was good enough for his daughter. To keep them apart, he sent her to live with her uncle on the other side of the country. That's rough. Soon after she left, Jim got sick and he wasted away and died. He just wasted away and died. He had nothing to live for. He didn't have a good life at all. Jim did nothing of value. And then he died. Everyone said he died of a broken heart. The farmer felt so guilty about Jim's death. He could not tell his daughter what had happened. She continued to think about Jim and the life that they might have had together. One night, many weeks later, there was a knock on her uncle's door, and when the girl opened the door, Jim was standing there. But I thought he died. Your father asked me to get you, he said. I came on his best horse. Is there anything wrong, she asked. I don't know, he said. She packed a few things, and they left. She rode behind him, clinging to his waist. Soon he complained of a headache. It aches something terrible, he told her. She put her hand on his forehead. Why, you're as cold as clay. That's the title. I hope you're not ill, and she wrapped her handkerchief around his head. They traveled so swiftly that in a few hours they reached the farm. The girl quickly dismounted and knocked on the door. Her father was startled to see her. Didn't you send for me? She asked. No, I didn't, he said. She turned to Jim, but he was gone, and so was the horse. They went to the stable to look for them. The horse was there. It was covered with sweat. Wait, can horses sweat? Can horses be covered in sweat? What, or did like a human just come up and just wipe its sweat all over the horse? And it was covered in sweat and trembling with fear, but there was no sign of Jim. Terrified, her father told her the truth about Jim's death. Then quickly he went to see Jim's parents. They decided to open his grave. The corpse was in its coffin, but around the head, they found her handkerchief. Dun, dun, dun. That's kind of spooky, actually. That is a little spooky. That would be creepy if it happened to me, I think. Also, that good for nothing Jim. He did nothing of life. Died of a heart attack and then put his sweat all over a horse. So you know what? Good riddance. In my opinion. Which might be a little rough, but okay. Time for the next story. Horse sweat is truly spooky. Yeah. I don't think horses can sweat, can they? I don't think they have sweat glands. I think that's why you have to like cool them off with fans and just have water. It's kind of like how you do like a dog. Alrighty. Next story. This one is called The Haunted House. A very original title. Do not steal. One time, a preacher went to see if he could put a haunt to rest at a house in his settlement. The house had been haunted for about 10 years. Several people had tried to stay there all night, but they always would get scared out by the haunt. So this preacher took his Bible and went to the house, went on in, built himself a good fire. In the house? He built a fire in the house? What? Or like outside the house? Yeah, no worries. I'm gonna go in your house and build a fire. I'm gonna light your house on fire. That's gonna definitely get rid of the haunt. It would, though. Maybe. Actually, I don't know. He sat there reading the Bible, and then just before midnight, he heard something start up in the cellar, walking back and forth, back and forth. Then it sounded like somebody was trying to scream and got choked off. Then there was a lot of thrashing around and struggling, and finally everything got quiet. The old preacher took up his Bible again, but before he could start reading, he heard footsteps coming up the cellar stairs. He sat watching the door to the cellar, and the footsteps kept coming closer and closer. He saw the doorknob turn, and when the door began to open, he jumped up and hollered, "What do you want?" The door shut back easy-like, and there wasn't a sound. He scared the ghost. The preacher was trembling a little, but he finally opened the Bible and read a while. Then he got up and laid the book on the chair and went to mending the fire. Then the haunt started walking again, and step, step, step up the cellar stairs. The old preacher sat watching the door, saw the doorknob turn, and the door open. It looked like a young woman. He backed up and said, "Who are you? What do you want?" Oh my gosh, I wish you could see the illustration that I just turned to. Actually pretty terrifying. Those were the reasons why we were scared of these books as children, I feel like. Not the actual stories, but the illustrations. The haunt sort of swayed like she didn't know what to do, and then she just faded out. The old preacher waited, and when he didn't hear any more noise, he went over and shut the door. He was sweating and trembling all over, but he was a brave man, and he thought he'd be able to see it through. So he turned his chair to where he could watch, and he sat down and waited. It wasn't long before he heard the haunt start up again, slowly. Step, 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 closer and closer, step, step, and it was right at the door. The preacher stood up and he held his Bible out before him. The knob slowly turned, and the door opened wide. This time the preacher spoke quiet-like. He said, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, who are you and what do you want?" The haunt came right across the room. Also, I love how they're saying haunt instead of ghost. Like ghost has copyright on it or something for some reason. The haunt came right across the room, straight to him, and took hold of his coat. Oh my. It was a young woman about 20 years old. Her hair was torn and tangled, and the flesh was dropping off her face so he could see the bones and part of her teeth. This is very calming music. Very, very anticlimactic music for what's happening right now. She had no eyeballs, but there was a sort of blue light way back in her eye sockets, and she had no nose to her face. Then she started talking. It sounded like her voice was coming and going with the wind blowing it. She told how her lover had killed her for her money and buried her in the cellar. I know, right? This is for children. You know what? This story actually itself is like not very like that's a horrifying description, right? The flesh was dropping off her face. She had no eyeballs and a blue light glowing in the back of her sockets. That's a terrifying image to think of. To have. Imagine having a nightmare about that as a kid, right? No wonder. No wonder we all grew up with trauma like this and a slight love for horror. Where was I? She told how her lover had killed her for her money and buried her in the cellar. She said if the preacher would dig up her bones and bury her properly, she could rest. Then she told him to take the end joint of her little finger from her left hand and to lay it in the collection plate at the next church meeting. But for what? Oh, and then he'd find out who had murdered her. And then, she said, if you come back here once more after that, you'll hear my voice at midnight, and I'll tell you where my money is hid, and you can give it to the church. The haunt sobbed like she was tired, and she sunk down toward the floor and was gone. The preacher found her bones and buried them in the graveyard. The next Sunday, the preacher put the finger bone in the collection plate, and when a certain man happened to touch it, it stuck to his hand. The man jumped up and rubbed and scraped and tore at the bone trying to get it off. Then he went to screaming like he was going crazy. Well, he confessed to the murder, and they took him on to jail. That's it. That's just how the sentence is written. I love that. Like, well, he couldn't deny it any longer. There was literal piece of evidence that was sticking to him that didn't want to be taken off. After the man was hung? Wow. The preacher went back to that house one midnight, and the haunt's voice told him to dig under the hearth rock, whatever that is. He did, and he found a big sack of money. And where that haunt had held on to his coat, the print of those bony fingers was burned right into the cloth. It never did come out. But he got the money, and they found the murderer. So, like, that's a good story. That's a good end. That's a good ending. That's, it's a little reminiscent of Corpse Bride. I wonder. And I heard that that's actually like an old folk tale. So I wonder if that's where they got the idea. Interesting. But yeah, I can't believe this is for children. I need a little sip of water. Or I need some candy apparently. I wish I could get rid of this candy basket. So, you know, I need a bite of candy. I need the sugar to keep going, you know? So, the next story that I have is called The Guests. A young man and his wife were on a trip to visit his mother. Usually they arrived in time for supper, but they had gotten a late start, and now it was getting dark, so they decided to look for a place to stay overnight and go on in the morning. Just off the road they saw a small house in the woods. Maybe they rent rooms, the wife said, so they stopped to ask. An elderly man and a woman came to the door. They didn't rent rooms, but they would be glad to have them stay overnight as their guests. They had plenty of room, and they would enjoy the company. The old woman made coffee and brought out some cake, and the four of them talked for a while. Then the young couple were taken to their room. They again explained that they wanted to pay for this, but the old man said that he would not accept the money. The young couple got up early the next morning before their host had awakened, and on a table near the front door they left an envelope with some money in it for the room. Then they went on to the next town. It's very nice. They stopped in a restaurant and had breakfast. When they told the owner where they had stayed, he was shocked. "That can't be," he said. "That house burned to the ground, and the man and the woman who lived there died in the fire." It burned to the ground because there was a ghost in there, and they hired a preacher, and he set up a fire in the house in the last story, and it just burned to the ground. The young couple could not believe it. They went back to the house, only now there was no house. All they found was a burnt-out shell. They stood, staring at the ruins, trying to understand what had happened, and then the woman screamed. In the rubble was a badly burned table, like the one they had seen by the front door, and on the table was the envelope they had left in the morning. So they got to keep their money. Yeah. Yes, it was a ghost fire. Maybe ghosts started the fire. You don't know. This music is nice, although it's not very fitting, so I think I'm going to try to switch it. So give me one moment while I try to find. I think I'm gonna try. I'm just searching up like royalty free. I'm honestly just looking up royalty free, copyright free music that I can find on YouTube. So if you're wondering what I'm playing, just type in royalty free Halloween music and you will get whatever I have been playing, honestly. But let's try for something a little bit more ambient. This is very whimsy. Let's try this one. This one sounds spooky. Yeah, here we go. This one sounds spooky. Because the next story is actually quite scary. And this is actually like a legit fear that I still have to this day. I have something in my eye that should not be in my eye. Sorry. Okay, this story is called High Beams. There is a girl driving an old blue sedan who is a senior at high school. She lived on a farm about 8 miles away and used the car to drive back and forth. She had driven into town that night to see a basketball game, and now she was on her way home. As she pulled away from the school, she noticed a red pickup truck follow her out of the parking lot. A few minutes later, the truck was still behind her. I guess we're going the same direction, she thought. She began to watch the truck in her mirror. When she changed her speed, the driver of the truck changed his speed, and when she passed a car, so did he. Then he turned on his high beams, flooding her car with light. He left them on for almost a minute. He probably wants to pass me, she thought, but she was becoming uneasy. This music is actually kind of making it a little bit more tense for me. Usually she drove home over a back road. Not too many people went that way, but when she turned onto that road, so did the truck. I've got to get away from him. And she began to drive faster. Then he turned his high beams on again. After a minute, he turned them off. Then he turned them on again, and off again, on again, and off again. She drove even faster, but the truck driver stayed right behind her. Then he turned his high beams on once more, and once more her car was ablaze with light. What is he doing? What does he want? She wondered. He turned his high beams on again and off again. But a minute later, he had them on again, and he left them on. At last she pulled into her driveway, and the truck pulled in right behind her. She jumped from the car and ran to the house. "Call the police," she screamed at her father. Out in the driveway, she could see the driver of the truck. He had a gun in his hand. When the police arrived, they started to arrest him, but he pointed to the girl's car. "You don't want me," he said. "You want him." Crouched behind the driver's seat, there was a man with a knife. As the driver of the truck explained it, the man slipped into the girl's car just before she left the school. She saw it, or he saw it happen, but there was no way he could stop it. He thought about getting the police, but he was afraid to leave her, so he followed her. Each time the man in the back seat reached up over to overpower her, the driver of the truck turned on his high beams. That is when the man would drop down, afraid that someone might see him. Which is terrifying. That's terrifying. I'm always scared whenever I get into a car that there's like gonna be like someone in the back seat, unless like I'm able to look in the back seat before I enter the car, like already through the windows, you know? It's a terrifying thought. It kind of reminds me of, I think there was this horror story of a man. I don't know if this was like a horror story or if it was a true story. And if it's a true story, that's even more terrifying. But there is a story of a man who sewed, had sewed, I don't know. He had put himself in, through the process of sewing, into a woman's chair without her knowing. So he could be, so she could sit on him. That's fucked up. It's fucked up, right? So anyways, I guess on that note, next story. This one is called The Drum. Once there were two sisters. Actually, hold on. I'm gonna change the music up for this one as well, I think. We're gonna do something like this. Ooh, this sounds perfect. Perfect. This one is called The Drum. Once there were two sisters. Dolores was 7 and Sandra was 5. They lived in a small house in the country with their mother and their baby brother, Arthur. Their father was a seaman and was away on a long voyage. One day, Dolores and Sandra were running across a field near their house when they met a fortune teller girl playing a drum. Her family was camping in the field for a few days. As the girl played, a little mechanical man and a woman came out of the drum and danced. That's pretty cool. Thanks for the nightmare fuel. You're welcome. So yeah, next time you sit down, make sure you check for a man, I guess. Where was I? Here we go. Dolores and Sandra had never seen such a drum, and they begged the girl to give it to them. It's kind of rude. Can't just take it. She looked at them and laughed. I will give it to you, she said, but only if you are very bad. Come back tomorrow and tell me how bad you were, and I will see. That's not a good influence. Especially because, how old are they? They were 7 and 5. Soon as the two sisters got home, they started shouting, which was against the rules in their house. Then they wrote all over the walls with their crayons. At supper, they spilled their food, and when it was time for bed, they wouldn't go. They did everything that they could to think of to upset their mother. They were really, really bad. Early the next morning, they hurried off to find the fortune teller girl. We were really bad yesterday, they told her, so please give us the drum. But when they told her what they had done, the girl laughed. Oh, you must be much worse than that if I am to give you the drum. As soon as Dolores and Sandra got home, they pulled up all the flowers in the garden. Wow, that would actually piss me off. Then they let the pig out and chased it away. Why do all of these characters live on farms? No one lives in the city? Anyway. They tore their clothes up, they sloshed in the mud. They were a lot worse than the day before. If you do not stop, their mother said, I will go away and take Arthur with me, and you will get a new mother with glass eyes and a wooden tail. What a weird threat to tell your children. Hey, if you don't stop being bad, I'm going away and I'm taking the baby with me. And also your new mom is gonna have glass eyes and also a tail made out of wood. That's just a weird threat. But that scared Dolores and Sandra. They loved their mother, and they loved Arthur. They could not imagine being without them, and they began to cry. I don't want to leave you, their mother said, but unless you change your behavior, I will have to leave you. We'll be good, the girls promised. Yet, they did not really believe that their mother would go away. She's just trying to scare us, Dolores said. We'll get the drum tomorrow, said Sandra. Then we'll be good again. Early the next morning, they rushed off to find the fortune teller girl. And when they found her, she was playing the drum again, and the little man and woman were dancing. They told the fortune teller girl how bad they had been the day before. That must be bad enough to get the drum. Oh no, no, said the fortune teller girl. You must be much, much worse than that. But we promised our mother to be good from now on, said the girls. If you really want the drum, you must be much, much, much worse, said the fortune teller girl. It's only for one more day, Dolores told Sandra. Then we will have the drum. I hope you're right, said Sandra. Oh my God. I don't want to read this next sentence. As soon as they got home, they beat the dog with a stick. Wow. Okay, you know what? Screw those children. They broke the dishes. They tore their clothes to pieces. Again. And then they spanked their baby brother, Arthur. Their mother began to cry. I would too. Yeah, you know what? At that point, I would leave. You know what? Nope, I'm gone. I'm gone. Enjoy your mom with the wooden tail. You're not keeping your promise, the mother said. We will be good, said Dolores. We promise, said Sandra. I can't wait much longer, said their mother. Please try. Early the next morning, before their mother was awake, Dolores and Sandra ran to see the fortune-teller girl. They told her all about the bad things they had done the day before. We were horrid. We were worse than we had ever been. Can we have the drum now, please? Said the girls. No, said the fortune-teller girl. I never meant to give it to you. It was just a game we were playing. I thought you girls knew that. Dolores and Sandra began to cry. They rushed home as quickly as they could, but their mother and Arthur were gone. They're out shopping, said Dolores. They'll be back soon. But they were still not back before lunch came. Dolores and Sandra felt lonely and scared. They wandered through the fields the rest of the day. Maybe they will be home when we get back, said Dolores. When they got home, they saw through the window that the lamps were lit and there was a fire in the fireplace, but they did not see their mother or Arthur. Instead, there was their new mother, her glass eyes glistening, and her wooden tail thumping on the floor like a drum. That's what they deserve. Awful kids. They... Awful kids. All for a drum. I would probably want to leave too. Not going to lie. Yeah, they did deserve it. They did. I agree. I very much agree. Next story. This next story is called The Window. Margaret and her brothers, Paul and David, shared a small house on top of a hill just outside the village. It was so warm one summer's night that Margaret could not sleep. She sat up in bed She sat up in bed in the darkness of her room, watching the moon move across the sky. Suddenly, something caught her eye. She saw two small yellow-green lights moving through the woods near the graveyard at the bottom of the hill. They looked like the eyes of some animal, but she could not make out what kind of creature it was. Soon the creature left the woods and moved up the hill toward the house. For a few minutes, Margaret lost sight of it. Then she saw it coming across the lawn toward her window. It looked something like a man, and yet it didn't. Oh, hello. Nice of you to finally join, Mana-chan. Thank you. Finally. Margaret was terrified. She wanted to run from her room, but the door was next to her window. She was afraid the creature would see her and break in before she could escape. When the creature turned and moved in another direction, Margaret rushed to the door. But before she could open the door, it was back. Margaret found herself staring through the window at a shrunken face like that of a mummy. Its yellow-green eyes gleamed like a cat's eyes. She wanted to scream, but she was so frightened that she could not make a sound. The creature broke the window glass, unlocked the window, and crawled inside. Margaret tried to flee, but the creature caught her. It twisted its long, bony fingers into her hair, pulled back her head, and sank its teeth into her throat. Margaret screamed and fainted, and also probably died because someone just grabbed her by the back of her head and bit into her throat. And no, I was starting at 7. It's alright. When her brothers heard her piercing scream, they rushed to her room. By the time they got the door unlocked, the creature had fled. Margaret lay on the floor bleeding and unconscious. While Paul tried to stop the bleeding, David chased the creature down the hill toward the graveyard, but soon he lost sight of it. The police thought it was the work of an escaped lunatic who believed he was a vampire. When Twilight fans get too real. When Margaret recovered, her brothers wanted to move to a safer place where it would be harder to break in, but Margaret refused. The creature would never come back. She was sure of that, but just in case, Paul and David began to keep loaded pistols in their rooms. One night, months later, Margaret was awakened by a scratching sound at the window. When she opened her eyes, there was the same shrunken face staring in at her. That night her brothers heard her cries in time. They chased the creature down the hill, and David shot it in the leg. But the creature managed to scramble over the graveyard wall and disappear into an old into an old burial vault. Burial vault? Burial vault? Burial vault? The next day, Margaret and her brothers watched as the sexton of the church opened the burial vault. Inside was a horrifying scene. Broken coffins, bones, and rotting flesh was all over the floor. Only one coffin had not been disturbed. When the sexton opened it, there lay the creature with the shrunken face that had attacked Margaret. The telltale bullet was in its leg. They did the only thing they knew of to rid themselves of a vampire. They built a roaring blaze outside the vault and fed the shrunken body to the flames. They watched the body burn until nothing remained but the ashes. Just like how that pastor should have done to that house with the ghost. And yeah, no, Manashan, I told you I was starting at 7. It's been scheduled for a little while now too. So man. I'm gonna have to get a new Manachan then. Just looks like it. But I have one more story, and then I think I'm gonna head off after that. But thank you for joining me. If you were just listening to this in the background, I hope you have been enjoying the stories. I hope you have been enjoying the music. Chill, spooky vibes. Thank you for joining me. The next story is called Harold. Harold. When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a... Why does every place have a farm or farm animals? This is... Where is this book? Who's the... Where does it say? Where does it say that they... It doesn't say anything about, like, where the authors live. It just says that they like telling folklore stories, so... I don't know, maybe these are just all old stories back in the day when everybody had farms. Maybe. Bad things happen on farms. It's the law, yeah? I guess so. But anyway, hold on. I need another bite of candy. I don't know about you guys, but that's how I bite into my candy. I just dip my bucket back and I just eat it, wrapper and all. That's how I like to eat it. Anyway, when it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool, green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they stayed there with the cows for 2 months. Then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but oh, it was boring. All day the two men tended to their cows. At night, they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything. Let's make a doll the size of a man. It would be fun to make, and we could put it in the garden to scare away the birds. It should look like Harold. Harold was a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose and tiny eyes, just like Harold. Then they had dark hair and a twisted frown. Of course, they also gave it Harold's name. Each morning on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night they brought him inside so then that way he wouldn't get ruined if it rained. When they were feeling playful, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" And then the other, making believe he was Harold, would answer in the crazy voice, "Very slowly." They would both laugh, but not Harold, because Harold was dead. Well, he was inanimate. I shouldn't say he was dead. He just wasn't alive to begin with. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick him or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take the food they were eating, which they were both sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like that stew, Harold?" "Well, you better eat it, or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter. One night, after Thomas had wiped Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold," Thomas said. "I was watching him when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt? He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible." "Let's throw him in the fire." Farms and fire. Yes, this is very telling of when these stories were written. "Let's not do anything stupid," said Alfred. "We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind. For now, let's just keep an eye on him." So they left Harold sitting in the corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then the doll grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe a mouse or some insects had gotten inside Harold and were making those sounds. Yes, insects got inside a scarecrow, essentially, and made it make human guttural noises. Yes. Hello! Nice to see you here. Unfortunately, I am on my last story, but thank you for joining in, at least for a little bit. Where was I? Oh, yes, here we go. Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning they put Harold out in the garden, and each night they brought him back into the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed that something frightened him. "Harold is growing." "What?" "You know, I was thinking the same thing," Thomas said. Maybe it's just our imagination. We've been up here on this mountain too long. The next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth like a horse on its hind legs. All day and all night long, he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in a far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were terrified. They decided to take the cows down into the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped a great danger and began joking and singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgot to bring the milking stools. Not the milking stools! Now they're gonna get Charlie horses in their legs, and that's truly the most scariest thing that can happen to you. Neither one wanted to go back for them. But the stools would cost a lot to replace. Why? They're stools. They're just wooden stools. Just get like a milk crate or something. I'm sure you guys have milk crates. You guys milk the cows. I don't know if you guys make the milk there, but like, come on. There really is nothing to be afraid of, they told one another. After all, what could a doll do? It's not a doll. It's a scarecrow. You put respect on Howard's name. Can't milk without the milking stools. They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. I'll catch up with you, he said, and Alfred walked on toward the valley. When Alfred came to a rise in the path, he looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere. But he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again. As Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun. That's fucked up. That's fucked up. He skinned his friend. He just wanted the milking stools, and he skinned his friend. They got straws but no stools? I know, right? I know. Just sit on some hay bales. Get a milking crate. Yeah. Yeah. He skinned them. That's what you get for calling him a doll. As a grown scarecrow man. That is a grown scarecrow man. You do not call him a doll. I'm gonna do, I think I'm gonna do one more story. I'm just gonna flip to a random one, and we're gonna end on just one other random story. Let's see. Let's try. Okay, this one I think is like a funny, scary one. It's a little spooky, but spooky theme, but it's funny. It's a funny story, actually. So there were two men. Oh, the end of the last one. So he went back to go find his friend, and instead on the roof of the hut was Harold, the scarecrow, and he had a piece of skin that he was drying out in the sun. So, I imagine you can put you can put two and two together and possibly figure out what happened to Alfred. Alfred got turned into some jerky Haha. Get it? Because cows. I'm funny. Anyway, next story. Two men, Leon and Todd, loved baseball. When they were young, they had played on the town's baseball team. Leon had been the pitcher, and Todd had played second base. Now they were a lot older, they spent their free time watching baseball games on TV and just talking about baseball. Do you think they play baseball in heaven? Leon asked Todd one day. That's a good question. The one who gets there first should let the other one know somehow. As it turns out, Todd got to heaven first, and Leon waited patiently to hear from him. One day, Leon found Todd sitting in the living room, waiting for him. Leon was very excited to see him. What is it like up there? And what about baseball? When it comes to baseball, said Todd, I have some good news, and I have some bad news. The good news is that we do play baseball up in heaven. We have some fine teams. I play second base on my team, just like I used to in the old days. That's the good news. What's the bad news? Asked Leon. The bad news, said Todd, is that you're scheduled to pitch tomorrow. It's so stupid, but I love it. The bad news is that tomorrow you're gonna fucking die. uh, so those are the stories. I hope you enjoyed them. And again, these are stories that I got from the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books that I used to have as a child that I still have the books, but maybe you enjoyed them as a child as well. And with that, I think I'm going to end the stream. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the stories. I hope you enjoyed the music, the vibes. I hope you enjoyed the cute outfit. Just gonna show it off one more time here. Just gonna do a little turnaround, a little a little a little spinny spin. Whoa! I didn't know the skirt could do that. But yeah, thank you. Obviously, it's like I kind of went for a Alice in Wonderland kind of look for it, but yeah, thank you so much. I don't know when the next stream will be. I will obviously post about it. We will see what the future will have in store for me. And okay, that's pretty much it. Okay, thank you. Bye.